took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they blank away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it doesn't show how I sing the same we can sustain. Knowing that your eyes are blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
Blinded by the light.
Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down from the sky and drop the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you're in my time zone, welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I'm Clay Douglas. My guest today is William Blair of Introspect, and we'll probably be joined by Art George and possibly others today. We're going to be talking a little bit about who's in control, who won that Revolutionary War. If we won it, why are we kissing the IRS's ass? Why are we putting up with these politicians, with these lawyers, working for the Bar Association out of the City of London? Or, of course, there's the Vatican over there, too. One of the three city-states that control us, the Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican. But we'll be discussing that, what we can do about it. I'll be giving you some of the history. I've gone up against these people. I've been in these presidential races. And let me just take an aside here to put in a plug for a presidential candidate. I've been in presidential politics since 1996. I've watched how they operated. I've rubbed elbows with Bob Dole, with Pat Buchanan, with Alan Keyes, a lot of others. I've watched how the media turned their cameras off when people like Charles Connors, honest politicians, honest candidates, got up to tell you what we could do about it, how we could start issuing our own money. I watched them turn their cameras off, so you never heard. Now, you've got a chance now to hear a candidate out there, and I put him up, and I put a couple of interviews up, right up to the top of my website, and that's Donald Trump. And I've got a lot of my fans out there. Some of you are friends of mine. They say, oh, well, Donald Trump, you know, his daughter's Jewish. He's a friend of the Jew. Well, let's see, who told you that? Oh, yeah, it was a Jew by the name of Brother Nathaniel that told you Donald Trump was friends with Jews. Well, yeah, he made a lot of money working with the Jews. I made a lot of money working with the Jews in New York, just like Donald Trump did. I made my money with the Jews in the paraphernalia industry. Donald Trump made his money with the Jews in the real estate business. And I've listened to what Donald Trump said. I've listened to his family. And he's telling you the truth. He's telling you the truth about the immigration. He's telling you the truth about everything. And then you've got some so-called patriots out there. Again, some of you friends of mine, I'm sorry to say that, but you know, he's Jewish. His daughter's Jewish. His daughter married a Jew. So what? So what? When he's trying to do something, what do you want to do? You want to kill all the Jews? I don't. That's not what it's about. You know, you might as well say, well, he's an Indian. He's an Indian. No, he's a man. He's a man. You go to freeamerican.com and watch what he's got to say, or listen to what he's got to say about immigration. Listen to him. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. I don't think we ought to build a wall, because I think that wall is intended to keep us in, not to keep them out. But again, I can have differences. We can have differences. But we can work together as Americans, not colors, not blacks, not Mexicans, not whites. We can work together as Americans, not Christians, not Muslims, not Jews. We can work together as people. And just to set the stage for our conversation today, I want to play a video made by somebody that's totally against government, somebody that's totally, an anarchist. You probably heard of anarchist as in a negative tone, but I want you to listen to Larkin Rose talk about a little dot. The little dot. You're going to have to use a little bit of imagination. When you picture the throng, there's a lot of dots. And the power as one tiny dot. We are the throng. The tiny dot is your politicians. Let's see if we can do this. Hello, William. How are you?
Hey, Larkin Rose here. So the most recent Josie the Outlaw video about supporting the troops is out and offending lots of people, as expected, but also lots of other people are saying, yeah, right on, including a bunch of veterans, which is pretty cool. Thought I'd add a few thoughts of my own. Oh, first of all, here's the link to watch the video if you want to. It's only 2.5 minutes long, short and to the point, and I thought I'd throw in a couple thoughts of my own. Tyrants always feed off of fear-mongering, and their best trick is fear of the unknown. If a tyrant can say, this horrible bad thing is going to happen to you unless I have lots of power, most people are going to fall for it. And the details change, the template doesn't. They'll say, you'll be starving to death and poor if you don't give me the power to build a giant welfare state. Or you'll be victimized by all these nasty people if you don't give me the power to build a giant police state. Or terrorists will be blowing you up if you don't give me the power to spy on everybody and frisk you at airports and this and that and the other thing. And then, of course, the military one of, we're going to be invaded by foreign powers if you don't give me the power to have a giant military. And people are so easy to scare, and they think, well, if there's even a possibility that that's true, then we have to do something. And by do something, the politicians always mean increase government power and decrease individual freedom. That's always the proposed solution. And a perfect example of this template, and the thing is, people never even think out, well, what is the actual threat of that? You know, is this thing that he's trying to scare us with, is that at all real? Does it match reality? Does it match my own experience? I mean, the overall thing of the main complaint of anarchy is if we didn't have a ruling class, we would all be violent animals killing and eating each other. Why does anybody think that? I mean, do they think that about themselves? That, hey, if there weren't politicians telling me what to do, I'd just be a complete freaking maniac. I have yet to meet anybody who thinks that, but they've been duped into thinking the rest of the world would be complete freaking maniacs if there weren't politicians taking their money and bossing them around. So, but the example of this template that I want to talk about today, you can see it in the bumper stickers that say, if you love your freedoms, thank a veteran. My question is, why? Why should I thank a veteran if I love freedom? Now, for anybody who's going to wet their pants that I would even ask such a question, if there's a decent answer, give me the decent answer. Now, the specific thing I've been asking a whole bunch of nationalists in the comment section under Josie's video about supporting the troops is, when you say, you only have the freedom to say these things because of what the troops have done, okay, if that is true, then tell me exactly who it is who would have come here, conquered and enslaved 100 million armed Americans, and the other 200 million that aren't, and taken away our freedom of speech, if not for what the U.S. military is doing. Who would have done that? Who are we supposed to be scared of? Who is it that would have come here and taken away our freedoms, if not for the military blowing crap up in Iraq? And here and there and everywhere. Who are we supposed to be scared of? In this case, there isn't even a real threat to exaggerate. You have to all the way make it up. I mean, nobody in their right mind would say, well, Iraq, if we didn't go and stop them when they went into Kuwait, they would have conquered the U.S. and banned dissent. Like, nobody really thinks that who has any brain. Now, mind you, what Saddam did, what every ruling class does, is evil and unjustified, and defending against them is perfectly moral and justified. I'm not saying everybody else around the world is so nice. I mean, people think in these categories and their brain gets stuck so that they think all there is political left and political right. So if you say, I oppose what the military is doing, some people say, oh, you think everyone in the world is going to be nice? No, lots of nasty people in the world. Adding more nasty people doesn't help. And some people will say, and they even said this under Josie's video when she openly says, it's not because I'm a pacifist. I believe in the use of force to defend against aggression. Oh, you must be a pacifist if you don't like the military. So people's brains just slide into these categories, and they can't think clearly about actual concepts. But I want a specific answer. Who am I supposed to be scared of? Who would be here taking away my freedoms if not for what the U.S. troops are doing all over the place? Who do you think has the ability to forcibly subjugate and enslave 100 million Americans? I mean, the best argument I've ever heard, which is really bad, but it's the best one, is, well, if not for what the troops did in World War II, we'd all be speaking German. And that's like the cliche thing to say. And even there I say, well, describe specifically what you think would have happened. Now, never mind the fact that there was no indication that Hitler had any hopes or dreams of conquering the U.S. It never made any indication of that. And again, what he did was totally evil. He deserved somebody blowing his damn head off. But to say that the military is why we're free, well, then explain to me what would have happened. Germany would have actually occupied the U.S. and 100 million armed Americans would say, well done, I guess you're our new bosses and we're just not going to defend anything. Is that really what anybody thinks? We'd all be speaking German. No, we wouldn't. And that is the best argument that statists have, is World War II, because here's this big group of powers in Japan and Germany and Austria and all that. The closest thing there's ever been to an actual threat. Now, during the Cold War, they pretended that the Soviet Union was just about to come take us over. That was just a joke the whole time. But now there isn't even that. Now it's, well, there's the war on terror, there's Al-Qaeda. They hate our freedoms. Like, what are they going to do about it? Some guy living in a cave in Afghanistan is going to sneak over here and somehow subjugate 300 million Americans. Just by some magic trick. But luckily, we have the U.S. troops protecting our freedoms by going after that guy in a cave. They're not protecting our freedoms. There is one threat in the world to the freedom of the American people. It is the United States government. It is the only gang that has any intention or any ability of violating the individual rights of the American people. And the only reason it has that ability is because the people hallucinate legitimacy to it. They imagine it to be authority and government. They imagine an obligation to pay tribute to it in the form of taxes and bow to its so-called laws. It's the only gang that can do it, because it's the only one that has duped the American people into feeling an obligation to obey. Nobody else could do it. There are about 100 million gun owners in this country. Among them, they own about 300 million guns. So if we were actually invaded, they could lend one to each of their unarmed friends, and then we'd have 300 million armed Americans. There is no force on earth that could do anything to subjugate us except the gang that is able to dupe most of the American people into feeling an obligation to obey it and pay tribute to it, which is the U.S. government. And that is the gang that the U.S. military works for. It is the gang they serve. So no, I don't thank a veteran if I like my freedoms, because they haven't done anything to preserve my freedoms. Now you can say they fought against bad people, and that is totally true. And again, defensive force, whether you have a uniform or not, is perfectly justified. If somebody is attacking somebody innocent, I'm glad if somebody stops the aggressor. Trouble is, government militaries never limit themselves to being purely defensive. They are always an aggressor. And I'll get to why that is in a second. But yeah, so statists never like to answer the question, well, who exactly would be here taking away my freedom if not for what the U.S. military is doing? And they can't even say. I can't even keep track of how many times I asked that in the comment section under Josie's videos. Nobody will really say, well, there's just sort of some vague threat out there. Terrorism or something would have somehow taken away our freedoms by magic, if not for the U.S. military going around blowing crap up all over the place constantly. Now, Americans like to think that they're progressive and care about freedom and care about the whole world and yada, yada, yada. But there's still some major pack mentality going on, some major nationalistic bias. And a bunch of people brought this up in the comment section. Well, what if the same thing happened to us that is happening to the people of Iraq or Afghanistan, or, you know, pick your favorite country where U.S. troops are driving around in tanks? China declares, we think the U.S. government is oppressing its people, which, by the way, would be true. So China sends over its military, and never mind that this is logistically impossible. It's a rhetorical question. Imagine it happened. And they're driving tanks up and down your neighborhood, saying, we are protecting you from your government. And by the way, in order to protect you from your government, we may have to go to door, kicking down doors and pointing guns at everybody and questioning people, just in case there's any bad people. Oh, and by the way, we're going to take your guns away, of course, for your own good, for your safety. How would you respond? Would you go, oh, good, our saviors are here? Or would you say, there's a foreign invading army in our town threatening us, violating our individual rights, let's defend ourselves? That's what I would do, and it's what a lot of people in Iraq would do, and a lot of people in Afghanistan would do, and a lot of people around the world would do, when the exact same thing is done by U.S. troops. And seriously, unless you would really say, oh, thank you, Chinese army, for taking away my guns and searching me at random and stopping me on the road and making curfews, telling me I'm not allowed to be outside in my own neighborhood at night, unless you would actually say, thanks for doing that and saving us, Mr. Chinese army, then why on earth would you support the troops doing the exact same thing to somebody else? And why would you be upset and outraged that there are insurgents who fight back? If somebody did that to me, I would fight back. The only reason people do this double standard is because they're still stuck in the nationalistic mindset. They think the flag on the shoulder matters, that morality changes based on which uniform you're using. It doesn't. And this is the thing. The U.S. troops swear to uphold the Constitution. Now, legally speaking, the Constitution applies inside the magical invisible line that defines the territory of the U.S. ruling class, known as the country of the United States of America. Legally, it doesn't apply outside of that line. But what the founders actually expressed in the Bill of Rights were saying, hey, these are inalienable human rights. All men. Not the people who happen to be standing on a piece of dirt that a bunch of crooks in D.C. claim the right to rule. These are inherent to mankind. Now, if that's what they said, why don't the U.S. troops believe that? If they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and they view that as that's the spirit of the Constitution, why are they constantly violating those rights on the other side of the world? As if, well, when you step over the line, morality completely changes. All the rules change. Right and wrong are just out the window or turned upside down.
I'm going to stop it right there because I'm wearing my Vietnam veterans cap right now. You can see it if you're on YouTube. But I volunteered to go to Vietnam when I realized they were killing the Vietnamese farmers that had never done anything to us. They were no threat to us. I ended up getting out of the Army, getting a medical discharge, still fighting for my benefits, for my even recognition that I volunteered for Vietnam. And I came back to the United States with everything he said on my mind. When I watched them kill 13, 17 little children and their families in Waco, supposedly, and watched the media try to present it to the American people like it was a good thing. Yeah, we saved them from child molesters. I started this magazine, I started this radio show, I started the militias in New Mexico and promoted them all over the country because that oath I took to defend the Constitution was not to go out and slaughter all the brown people, all the black people, or all the Jewish people. And I've been in their courtrooms. I'll talk a little bit about that later. They didn't want me in their courtrooms. Your Honor! Your Honor! This is the defendant! This is the defendant! Can't you make him go hire a lawyer? Your Honor, if you read my countersuit and my brief, I think you'll agree that I'm perfectly capable of defending myself. No, I won't go out and hire a lawyer. And the judge turned to the attorney for the opposition, said, no, I can't make him hire an attorney. And I won the case, and I started the Free American with the money I got from the asshole that tried to sue me. William, how are you, sir?
Wide awake, and certainly you've hit the pavement running here today. The difference, I want to make sure we get Art George up.
Art, you should be up with me. Are you up, Art? Did I get you up, Art? Let me see if I got him up here. Should have him up here. Yeah. We should have Art up. Is that the 267? Art, are you with me? We've got somebody on the 775 here. I've got him up. Wait a minute. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't. Now I do. Go ahead, Art.
Good morning, Clay.
Yeah, I didn't push the right button. Sorry about that, brother. And you're just in time. I've been rambling on here a little bit, but you're just in time to kick us off with a prayer, please.
Okay, you guys can hear me?
Yes, sir, I can now.
Okay, good. Digoy, pwede gitik idalaw ga sukat kumangaw. Today, baba ikihamwam nawe. Ga sugat ram angalati, tanglati, ramlati, pawalo. Ga sugat kumangaw Clay Douglas, William Blair. Timiloshe, Suyashe. Ida Nawa Uti with me Mile Tapesh Tatish Stinger. Mangali. Okay.
Thanks, Art. I always appreciate that.
Thank you, Art.
So I didn't hear what you guys were talking about this morning here. I had the phone on, but I was outside talking to another person, so I don't know what's your subject.
Well, I did one from an anarchist. It wasn't actually what I thought it was, or what I put it up for. I'll probably get to that later. But he was talking about the military and what are we protecting from here? And he pointed out that the thing we're protecting from, the only entity out there that could harm us and that we are threatened by is the U.S. government. The Chinese aren't over here threatening us. The Chinese aren't in the streets. And if you paid any attention to Jade Helm, what happened in Boston, what happened at Waco, it was the U.S. military that was the threat here. They're the only threat to the American people. And the clip I'll play probably later on in the show was had a graphic about us, the masses, represented by little circles that filled up the screen. There's 600 million Americans here, and we're being ruled by one little bitty dot that controls a little bit bigger dot that we call the IRS, or the police, and the Congress, the House, the Senate. Send us your money. Send us your money. We're taxing you for your money. We need the money. We need the money so we can go out and wage all of these wars. What do you need to do that for? Why do we need to go out and attack anybody else? That was basically the point that the gentleman doing the film was making. It's the reason I volunteered. I was a deluded American. I volunteered for Vietnam, but when I realized that every plank on the Communist Manifesto was intact in America today, I quit. I wouldn't work for the criminal government that we have today, and I wouldn't fight the Vietnamese. I did what I could to stop the war. I put out I sold the peace symbols and the peace over the flag and the peace on earth to every head shop, every Kmart, and every Spencer's Gifts around the country to do what I could to stop the war. I supported the singers that were trying to stop the war, and I was one of those hippies, supposedly. Actually, I was one of the bikers that protected the hippies at the parks from all the ignorant rednecks. And that's basically what the gentleman, the anarchist, was saying on the film there. So go ahead.
Boy, that's a lot, isn't it, William?
As I listen, I sit and look at our brief art at 797 pages, and I look at the identity theft clusters table. And the things that come to mind certainly are vast, but today we're going to slow down, take it step by step. And listening to Clayton's words and his fury about the issues of war, the mystery. And let me start with this. In Shakespeare's writing, obviously being a poetic personality, that possibly had something to do with writing the King James business plan, known as the Bible.
I have to interrupt you just a second, William. I said many times on my show, I've asked people if the Bible was prophecy or was it a plan. Thank you very much.
Well, the literature and the scientific evidentiary things are in place to examine it from being a strategic document. Shakespeare was very clear, and as you brought up war, he said, when war comes, go after those lawyers. And lawyers are bar lawyers and judges and so forth, because he was in the context of the European semi-culture. Although many advancements were made, a lot of dark side things did occur. It's impossible to live legally in a tyranny. And that is the words right below a subsection in the Intrusions Profiling book, identifying a state of tyranny. Now, as that sort of cruelty comes, it has to get there through a process. And it's like looking at a big circle. And in that circle, as we see it, we, as Introspect auditors, we measure the pre-incident indicators. And they're also well delineated in our audit system. And we also look at martial law matrix, meaning martial law occurs, it doesn't occur, points occur, elements occur. Regarding the mystery, and the mystery is created through the different jihads. You have a jihad of various religions, including Western and Eastern. In other words, jihads are not just what the media say that they are. It's very interesting to execute a genocide against a people, a limited genocide. You have to turn them into military targets. Now, we're talking about military protocols, and the military protocols are deceit, deception, misinformation, disinformation, just about all forms of treachery that you can realize, especially inclusive of conversational hypnosis, which involves, first, is this a war? What is terrorism? And we've identified terrorism by the very many names. And Art and I have spoke to this on your program more than once, that there was a interdiction campaign. It was not a asymmetrical warfare, because there's no such thing as war law. And it went after the indigenous people here, and certainly all over the world. And it was an interdiction campaign, like I said, non-asymmetric. In every atrocity, Holocaust, genocide, austerity program, sequestration, which is the consolidation of the corporate state's vested interest in property, personal and real, there's always going to be three basic personalities. And we've identified that, Art and I've identified that through his field audits, including the decision teams. Who are the decision teams? Probably the most important change in recent human history is that while the distractions under the D5E military protocol, which is organized under capstone doctrine. Capstone doctrine is all the way from the top. It's in the faith-based organizations, and basically Capstone combines the military with the civilian force of law. So essentially, you're seeing in America words like the police state and all this. But in actuality, those are nice adjective words, but they're really talking about Capstone doctrine as rationalized and justified to put order back in the world, and certainly under an inclusionary base. Now, I'm going to approach this biblical citation with these phrases: collapsing wrongdoing to the authority of the higher cause, and all acts are prohibited unless otherwise authorized. So as we reflect on those phrases, we see this: a person, a real human being, cannot live legally in a tyranny. In other words, there will be so many inclusionary rules, whether it be personal, environmental zoning, or legal, meaning legal, they do what is, they execute what is legal to do that which is unlawful. Now, before I go into this scriptural authority for just a very brief moment, you have to understand or comprehend, I prefer the word comprehend, that the common foundation of Western legal science actually went to different kinds of laws. There was a folk law, and there was a feudal law. And we'll talk about that as we go through the program today on identifying what is law. And feudal law essentially used royal courts and so forth. It evolved into what we have in a modern time, the supreme will of the corporate state. And to get to that, it had to go through a process of common law. It had to go through a process of either force or consent. And law, being the collective organization of an individual's right to a lawful defense, has evaporated under a collaborative law. And a collaborative law is about decision making. That means that the court, the Dooms Court, and various things that are noted in history, had to go back and could become a royal court. And that meant that the royal court was the king and so forth, the queen, and all these people we have as decision makers. When you listen to their conversations, you hear them making decisions. They no longer act as statesmen, and they literally approve and accept and concur with the Supreme Court becoming a royal court. And we have to have decision makers. And they will get rid of the separation of powers, which was the check and balance against tyranny, and we'll put in a very collaborative design, and we will not have to have evidence. We'll have consensus reality. And that consensus reality breaks down the barriers between the branches of government, and they become deciders. In 1993, the collaborative governance dogma was well on its way, and the doctrines were being perfected. And that meant that you would have a agency corporate partnership, and they would have ground rules. Literally, as they went into stakeholder councils, watershed councils all over the land, very similar to the 1930s to that of the Reich Force Service in Germany. And there was about 700 little community councils. And these little councils decided they would have authorities. So we come back into the modern day right here, And the guidelines were very clear that there would be a decision-making process. It would start out under the guise of education. That's how they did it in Germany. And in this, it was the consensus decision-making process. And it would be overlording all the other decision-making models. So the agencies worked with the universities, and they spun off the Cloward Piven strategy of make as much trouble and collapse as much traditional government in Indian country as well as you could. And it became, as I've characterized it with Art, it became an adoption of the round table. And the round table was a circle, of course, and it wouldn't have squares, so you would have this continuing circle. But we've coined it and said this: the participants as stakeholders were all seated at the tilted round table of sinking fools. Now, that goes global. It goes all the way to the global thing. Now, I want to break into this scriptural citation. We're going to bring this into focus. We're going to center. We're going to get to the central. Who are the people? There's the alleged anarchist. He said, well, who's doing this? Well, we know who's doing it. We have their names, addresses, titles, organizations in vast accounts under our project data integration system, local to global. The Bible scripture as an authority has a collection of books. In 1611, King James in the version of Luke 11:52, the authority, the scriptural authority says, "Woe unto ye lawyers, for ye have taken away the keys of knowledge. Ye entered not into yourselves, and them that were entering into you hindered." 1769, Oxford King James Bible Authorized Version. So we'll notice that word King James, that title of nobility. Nobility, the aristocratic class. As that says, it talks about concealment, about mystery. And it says basically that the lawyers would keep the secrets. And one of those ways that surfaced and we've documented is the partnership and the agreement between the aristocratic class and the barristers, who have become the lawyers and attorneys and doctors of jurisprudence and legal counsel, all being different. And that organization title was the Illuminati. Time passes on, and when you look at the journals on law, such as the Nature and Function of Law by Berman and Greiner, you start seeing where's law been and where's it going. And we pretend in this country that we're no longer under those dooms court kind of ideas, or those common law things and so forth. And what is common law? And we'll get at that. Felix Cohen's Handbook on Federal Indian Law qualifies as a bill of particulars, as we call it, as to the fact that the treaty covenants, the expectations, the compacts, the concepts of lawful promise, its conditions and terms, purposely were framed in what we call a serial discontinuity effect. And it's continued into modern era applications of federal state law, federal Indian law, and common law case precedents. In this mystery, there was at least a few things said. Now, bear in mind, Felix Cohan had membership in a whole array of foreign organizations, including faith-based organization that was not indigenous. And that's literally in the preface of the handbook as quoted. In the Jones versus Meehan case, it was clear that the treaties are to be construed not according to the technical meaning of its words to learned lawyers, but in a sense in which they would be naturally understood by the Indians. And there's several court cases that this applied, such as Wilson versus Wall and so forth. This is going into some very important things that apply to non-Indian people, the non-colored people.
Come on.
In other words, white is not considered a color. You'll hear people say the people of color, but white is excluded. So this already sets up a stagger in the thinking process, the rational process. The lands, issues of patents are affected in the context of treaties because there was pre-possessory people. They owned as creditors the land, the soil, the water, and the land is one thing. Real land is another. And then you had personal property such as water. Now, the courts don't possess any treaty-making power. And who runs the courts? The lawyers, the bar. It's very clear. You cannot practice in a state Supreme Court without getting the approval of the bar. And who is the bar? The bar is the Lawyer Guild. The Lawyer Guild is a American Bar Association. American Bar Association and all these entities have perfected their applications of laws, which there are about 20. Through all of this, that word collaboration comes up because the heart and soul of collaboration, what is really behind it? What's really going on in that collaboration? Well, collaboration is definable. It's defined. And it's very clear what lawyers do. Lawyers collaborate and they negotiate. And the problem comes as them being part of the problem, not the solution, is that they step in and outside the merry-go-round of the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the legislative branches of government. And what are they doing? They're commingling those branches and they're abrogating the separation of powers. Collaboration is defined in Black's Law. The act of working together in a joint project, commonly used in connection with treasonably cooperative efforts with the enemy. Okay, let's just stop right there. What did I say? I said that they had to work outside of their sovereign, outside of their allegiance to their sovereign people, and they had to work with an enemy. Well, who's the enemy? Well, the enemy was the belligerent nations, people that don't want to become part of the one heaven.
I find it interesting, William, that all of our heroes from the last century were portrayed as outlaws and thought of as outlaws. The Jesse James out there, and I guess you could include me on that too. I rode with the outlaws. I rode with the Hells Angels. I rode with the Banditos. I've even flown their patches a few times. I stopped doing that because I rode with all of them. I considered all, I do still consider all bikers my brothers, unless they step out of line. If they're outlaws or assholes or criminals, I just blow the whistle on them, expose them for who they are, and so I owe allegiance to no one except people like you and the people that are simply trying to get by in a criminal, under a criminal government. And that includes a few million people that have been put in jail or busted for smoking marijuana, something that God gave us, that government should have no right to control or imprison the people that take part in it. And I've even, and I'm not totally anti-Christian, because my friend Dr. Jake Wade, who has started and runs the Timothy Bible College, just called me to tell me that he was sending me something that proved I was right in what I've said over the years, that the governments are finding out that marijuana, cannabis cures cancer, son of a gun. Although that's what I've been telling people for 20 years.
Well, the sentimental arguments, especially in these contentious times, always go to government, pro-government, anti-government, extremist, radical, and all of these other inventions. The fact of the matter is, if a person is anti-government, they'd have to be anti-themselves, which means they would certainly have a personality challenge. To get back on this track, the secular political ideology of collaborative governance is in the judiciary. It's in the executive branch, and really it came from sources that we've well identified. And it's come to a point where to get across those sovereign boundaries, you have to do all kinds of wrongdoing. You have to collapse the wrongdoing to the authority of a greater interest, the higher cause. And in the treaties, including all treaties, they needed to be rewritten in context as social contracts. That meant that you would render the sovereign flesh and blood man, woman, as persons, artificial persons, and that would go to doctrines such as equal rights, which is not identified in Black's law, residents, inhabitants, taxpayers, user groups. Inputters is one of my favorite words, which deserves a cartoon. And the vast array of personalities who are on board and who is not on board. Now, the protected group status in affirmative action will go to things like transhumanism, which is not of natural law and certainly not of natural people.
Would you mind elucidating a little bit more on this transhumanism? You've used it several times in our radio shows, and I'm not sure that I recognize exactly what that means, and so I'm sure that a lot of my listeners don't know exactly what that means.
It's a artifact of a corporate kind of a mentality that you can take a human being and you can change their gender, and you go from being a natural conceived and birthed human. Pretty soon you get into DNA manipulations like the DNA gene matrix, and you influence the changing of the DNA. Its fault lies in the fact that if you go into couple marriages and everything, they will talk about the children. Well, you're not talking about children, you're talking about acquiring ownership or legal authority, or at least a management authority over the state's children. So gay couples may have a naturally conceived and birthed child prior, but a gay same-sex couple, it would be only through eugenics and GMO kinds of people shaping that they would have children. In other words, some of the grand hidden experiments are going on with getting rid of the male so that the children can be birthed through other means. And that's a matter of decency. In other words, in the human cultures, you have virtues, you have treacheries, you have cruelties. And to keep people going on these neutrality personalities and all this means that their values have to become neutral. So your transgender, transhumanism, and all these things come from civil rights agent-based movements, and they have a long history all the way back into the Tavistockian kind of we're going to think for everybody. We're gonna Adam and Eve them. They're going to be very obedient, good, productive citizens. So those flaws come up in a consistent pattern, and not only in the pattern of the product of the human resource, but also in the means by creating that transhumanism. The back into the lawyers once again. The bar court officers, the judges, the lawyers, the attorneys, legal counsel are incompetent and inept to represent the real personalities secured to sovereigns. And it conflicts with their esquire loyalty oaths to the bar temple. Notice I said bar temple. The brothers in the bond, reapers of the souls. Very important phrases. The surviving IRA relics of indigenous territory has been institutionalized in the memory of the past, meaning what has come to is a failed reservation state. Notice I'm omitting the word Indian, I'm saying failed reservation state. And that reservation, that failed reservation state is co-created by the cities, the counties, the state, the regional authorities, the federal, and international corporate partnership. Can we prove that? Of course we can. We can show the linkage. The problem in their zeal and their aggressiveness, cult-like aggressiveness, as represented by the Delphi cult techniques applied, they were in a hurry. And by isolating and degrading the spiritual aspect of and attributes of that indigenous man, woman personality, they left out the indigenous sacred estate held in the land. And they prostrated that same territory to a system of foreign and alien predatory and sumptuary economics. Sumptuary economics is where you have a aristocratic class and you have a consumer class. Okay, who writes the rules for that class? Well, of course, it was the barristers, the attorneys, the lawyers, and that's why we have so many lawyers in our legislative bodies. The economic model has now moved from calling it sumptuary economics or laws to sustainable development. And it's been re-socialized or re-dramatized through the Indian country revolution, revolvolution, and the Native Nation rebuilding projects such as that of the Bush Foundation. and they follow strategic plans. And what has happened that Lakota is an excellent example, where you have the foreigners, sovereigns, you have real men and women. Their community has been resocialized as a corporate municipality to fit into the state diocese design. And it was done by and protracted by bar lawyers. The bar court officers, and we'll get back to this, and I want Art to pick this up momentarily, were elected, but even more so the debate is to let's just go to an echelon appointment system, and we'll blame abuses of funding, and we'll compare it to campaign election reform and all these other mythical arguments, because the money is an idiot. Idiots often spend the money. So we have the collaborators as bar court officers protecting the vested interests of the court officers, in this within the scope of the judiciary and outside the judiciary as corporate dead person, corporate corpus, corpse, corporate dead person representatives. The bar court systems are subordinate to the trust, owned by the Vatican. What is the trust? Well, it certainly is under three kinds of law, including ecclesiastical. The papal cult, its surrogates are the British Empire and the crown colonies, which we have in effect and principles of law. The United States District Court for the District of Columbia is a good example, and the U.S. codes are copyrighted in England. Now, to break through to the new order, the bar court judges and lawyers had to be on board. What were they on board with? Well, they were on board with collapsing wrongdoing to the authority of the higher cause. And what is that? Well, we got to get rid of democracy. It's not going to work. We're going to move on to something else. We'll move through authoritarian rule, and we'll then move to totalitarian state, and then if necessary, we'll just go to a tyranny. The mechanism was identified as innovative international law, and it applies the presumption of the trust to the indigenous sacred estate held in the land by injecting equity and common law. That's interesting because the federal government can't do that. And the reason is this goes to spiritual property. The UN has become very aggressive, saying that its decision team decisions are final, and that's exhibited in the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples collectively. To get there, they had to use some corporate ideas about title to the soul, title to the spiritual property, and that's embedded into the UTC laws, which have now been adopted by many of the sovereign people in the United States of America. And basically, they use legality to exact that which is unlawful. Very important thing that's happening. This is codified into the operations of the Federal Supreme Court, the U.S. District Courts,
you're really beautiful,
and the subordinate states. When you're dealing with these dogma and doctrine, we can just reflect just instantly, not to go back there for a long time, that the states are dioceses, and they were put in under the direction of the Northwest Ordinance. and they would be courts Christian. That would carry with it the papal bulls, the global ordered state, the theory of uniformity, put through the courts Christian, and the court Christian would be the royal court, which required, as I said, the separation of powers doctrine abrogated, branches of government gone. And it would be legalizing, which has been touted and espoused and encouraged by the University of Oregon Law School lawyers. Basically, you call it legislating from the bench, but they're going to rationalize through going back to the royal court system that you can do this. And this means the implementation of feudal law. Now, all these attorneys are out there, and they have a little thing called immutable promise to their individual clients, their indigenous clients. Unfortunately, for the indigenous people, individually and collectively, the bar court officers are loyal to the crown, they're loyal esquire, so forth. That meant that they could not serve with an oath of allegiance the indigenous people, and this goes all the way back into treaty times, and it's true today, where the Indian Bar Association of America claims to represent all Indians in America without their consent. So your case is going to be important. I just want to ask you a couple questions about that, and then I want to go back and have Art pick this up. Now, the outlaws, the so-called bikers, outlaw means you're just not part of the law. That's all it means. You're outlaw. Doesn't mean you're a savage or anything like that. It means you're outlaw. The Enemy of the State is a good movie production about what happens. Just just nothing but a movie. But it also involves things like the savage and hostiles, which means you have to attack someone. While people are pining over the shootings and everything in this country, at the same moment that they're just outraged by 14 killings, which we will finally get to that reality in that story sooner or later. But at the same time, Hillary Clinton, as a ex officio of the trust, talked about the savages and constantly militarizes the targets. So what it does is it teaches the sheeple through a dysfunctional sediment to get those savages. Get those savages. They have to get those hostiles. So she's saying and expressing a major duplicity in her justice and judgment as an aficionado ex, but also as the human person unable to recognize the virtues and preeminent moral leadership, of which include mercy, compassion, and understanding, all of these things. So what is she saying? Well, all she's doing is she's representing the divine right of kings, the right of Christian discovery, right of conquest, manifest destiny, for sure, and eminent domain. Now, it takes a lot of presumptions, collusive presumptions, to go to that extent. And so you're back to these people that are targets. What are the interests? In 25 years, none of the talking heads that are spokesmen on the various operative medias have ever said what the interests are. And the reason is that that would take away what the lawyers have locked up literally as described by Luke as a biblical scripture and authority, the lawyers have locked up what is foreign policy, what is fundamental public policy. So I've made a little bit of a circle here, but I'd like Art to pick this up. And
okay, Art.
All right. Well, there's a lot going on, and it's funny when before I say what I've got to say here, I keep thinking that someone said this to me a long time ago, and it just came to me. It said, he said to me, when I was telling him about what has happened to my people and what has occurred over all these years, and he says to me, my dogma has been run over by your karma. And just, it was interesting when he said that to me, because I thought about it for years, and then all of a sudden I remembered it when you guys were talking here. And but I think about the conversational hypnosis of it all. The interdiction campaign, the genocide of the First Nations people has continued since the very beginning that the immigrants have landed here on this continent. And what started out as establishing a new world for those running from the persecution of themselves by their own tyrannists in their old country, the same convoluted processes of control is happening here, which is what we're discussing here this morning. The confusion, the so-called confusion, is using the lack of information, truth, to the masses to moving forward on the continuation of the agenda at hand. Now, I remember the other day, Clay, you mentioned about the gold being taken away from the first immigrants here, that, like you said before, when the president and the government wanted the gold from you guys, and then it paid nothing for it, and then all of a sudden it became of great value. The gold that was taken by the government from the original immigrants, as you have stated, who did that gold or commerce assets belong to in the first instance of possession? Today, that fact is today clouded from conversation. The hypnosis that the Indian has been conquered. So the venue of our governing system is the foreign design, the artificial implementation of the illusion of existence of our current control factor. To go back or to slow down the information, like William has said, the fact of discussion is the realization of the First Nations' existence. Even after the process of the continued annihilation, like the Senator Dawes said back in the past, when a BIA official wrote to him and said, these Indians need help. The immigrants are coming in and taking over all our land, and they'll soon not have any place to live. And that Senator Dawes tells them, don't worry about those Indians in the process of building of this country. Those Indians, they will soon disappear. And I always think about that, of how the leaders of this country always say something in such ignorance or such arrogance that eventually they become the same venue of support that those that were victims become those supporters. The truth of the matter is that we, the First Nations, have survived and are learning what has been the veil of deception. And as the beginning of the first immigration of this new world is the original nations are still here and are receiving the path of adaptation, evolution from spirit. The Creator, through spirituality, gives us that ability, the First Nations, to survive to conceive the process we must take to be in balance or in harmony. So, to speak or speak the natural world, natural, continues and thrives once again without blame of what we've had to endure. The natural way of humans have to live in harmony on this earth. It is to be spiritual and to listen to our hearts and to use our experience in our minds to bring life for all involved to the forefront of human evolution. Now, the New World design exists here and now, as well as the First Nations reality of traditional aspects of life's design, which are not New World aspects.
Now, let me interrupt you for just a moment, Art.
Let me finish here.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
and
sir.
what the aspects of the implementation of what we First Nations have learned and adapted in our design, such as homes, food sources, and governing systems, have improved our capabilities, and which are morals and principles of the original First Nations that was experienced in the beginning of the New World immigration hasn't changed. We just adapted to the continued behavior towards us, the First Nations, in the elimination agenda processes. And what comes to us in spirit and tells us all the time, the straw man or artificial being is a two-headed monster.
You know,
okay.
One of the things that I have talked to, I asked myself years ago, how did we exist? How did we exist 100 years ago? How did we exist 1,000 years ago? Were we happy? Were we content? Were we productive? Were we safe? And when I came up with the concept, the Liberty Village concept, I wasn't trying to build a housing development. I wasn't trying to just create a motel or a theme. I wanted to use the Native American motif to educate and to generate an income. I figured if I could set up a replica of an Indian village using 21st century technology, teepees, possibly made out of graphene and other sources of material that we didn't have 100 years ago. Solar on the top of the teepees, that we could show Americans the advantages of a indigenous existence. And I tried to do that, and that might have been the reason somebody tried to kill me. And I guess my question for you is that why hasn't the native indigenous population tried to do that too? Why haven't you're up in the mountains, the Lakota Sioux, you've got a remarkable heritage, and why haven't you tried to recreate that heritage and open it up to the tourists? I mean, how many thousands of bikers come up to Sturgis every year? Every year we mount up there, and we come up there and we honor the indigenous population just by coming there, It's a lot more than just show us your tits, you know. We We come up there to camp and to socialize and to enjoy the same kind of atmosphere that your people enjoyed on horseback. We enjoy on our steel horses. Why haven't you been? Why haven't you reached out to us? Why haven't you had tried to recreate your own Liberty villages, your own Lakota Sioux villages?
Art, William.
Clay, go ahead, William. Go ahead and answer that, William, and then I'll answer after you.
Let's bring Emerson Elk in on this. Clayton, you have Emerson Elk's number?
I do. Let me find that, and I've got it here somewhere. So hold on just a second, and I will get that up. I've got Emerson Elk here. I've got his number. And let me bring it up on. Let me bring it up here on my. Got it right here. We're dialing it.
What?
Call failed or was not answered. Let's try it again. Didn't come through here. Let me try it on Skype here. It's not letting me bring him up. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe here. Nope, says network error. I had 2 failed calls to Emerson. I got a network error here. Let me, I'll try it one more time. It's not letting me add him. It's almost, maybe it's going through this time. Tried one more time. Nope, said network error.
Okay, from that point, what we can do is Emerson Elk has made, as Lakota has made several contributions to the identity theft, as well as the other chiefs and headmen. And in carefully looking back at those actual accounts, it was pretty clear that when we start talking about a attraction, we're talking about tourism and so forth. And Sally Jewell, new Interior Secretary, has made it very clear that they're going to accentuate the roadside attractions in Indian country. One of the things that is obstructed, thwarted, inhibited, and preempted the Lakota people's way of life and values and decency has been certainly the tourism industry. And tourism in the world is a bridge. It's a bridge for developers and people that come behind them. in the identity theft document concerning Harney Peak and various other so-called first-time ever national parks in Indian country, these are certainly not of the indigenous people's way of life. These are economic constructs under the theme of sustainable development, and we're going to bring you development that's going to be fuzzy and warm and environmentally correct, and that's going to bring in some speculators too who are going to make money off that clean environment. In particular cases that come to mind, you say, why haven't they done this? Well, and it is because that is a foreign proof of concept, and those highways are made out of asphalt, and they have a mortality connected with them and spin off damage outputs. There are about 60 members of a particular Chamber of Commerce cooperating in invading the Lakota people's area. Now, a lot of people just don't care. They're values neutral, and they run with that, non-judgmental, and they run with market-driven standards. And that means that you evaluate the quality of life by income. So if you're going to have tourism, you're going to have income. And that income is going to be in the terms of a floating currency exchange rate on a foreign monetary system. In other words, everything you sell, purchase, barter is going to be evaluated and priced by taxation, and the IRA system of the tribes love taxation. They pretend that they don't, but they are engaged deeply in revenue sharing agreements with cities, states, counties, feds, and it will come to indirect taxing through the carbon tax footprint theology. So what we have is a bunch of members of the Chamber of Commerce. So as you may have a view of the New World Order or other such governmental things at the global scale, then you have to link in what is the role of the International Chamber of Commerce. How does that leak down, trickle down to the reservation state, the domestic dependent nation? Domestic dependent nation, why? Remote income, remote monetary system, remote services, health, food, energy, remote tourism as human resources coming to the reservation. And a lot of times you'll hear, welcome to the reservation, just leave your wallet and leave. So what's going on is that you are not dealing with a traditional value, and there's about 15 kinds of values. There are virtues and mores and ethics and all these things, but the hinge pin for all of this, the only common among anybody on the planet, is decency. And what you have, as you said, and we've seen in California case demonstrations where the ladies run by with their breasts out, and we see this in the casino motifs all over the United States. And the people that indigenous people characterize them as the apples. They're red on the outside, the motif, and they're white on the inside, their wallet. And we see that constantly to a fault, such as in the Navajo situation, where the applications of chemtrails and the toxic download into that people, into that all of the people in that region, was suppressed and chilled and quieted by the Navajo business entities in order to keep the casino business up. So what you're going to see is, on any enterprise that comes in, you're going to see trade-offs. And they're going to be called ethical environmental trade-offs, which includes primacy of environment, which includes the people, which addresses the sacred indigenous estate held in the land.
All right, let me bring on another caller here. Would this be Bryce in the Woods?
It could be, yes.
Hello, 605 area code. Who do we have here? All right. You didn't say that you wanted to come on, but I thought I recognized the number. 605 area code. You're on with the Free American Hour.
Right.
What's this? Sorry, sir?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Good morning.
Good morning. Talk to me. Who do I have here?
This is Joe Brownson-Better. Yeah.
All right, sir. Welcome to the Free
I thought
American
maybe
Hour.
I could get on. Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir. You're on with William and Art.
Am I on?
You're on the Free American Hour with Clay Douglas, William Blair, Art George.
Hello, Art George.
You got the air, talk.
Hello, Art. Yeah. I'm on the phone.
Yeah, you are. You're on the air.
Oh, I'm on, huh?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we all talk at the same time, you know, they kind of mixed up a little bit, huh?
I can always hang up on you. You know, whatever you want to do here. You can join the conversation or you can listen. You want to listen? Just listen?
Right, I'm listening.
All right, sir. I'll make that happen. All right. All right, go ahead. William, I believe you had the floor here.
I'm going to let Art pick this up now because, you know, I covered some basics there that Emerson Elk had brought into the exhibit file, and I wanted Art to pick this up as what he's seen, and certainly from his perspective on it.
Art? Wait a minute. I see. Maybe I lost him here. Did I lose you? I got you back, Art. Go ahead.
Yeah, what you asked a question earlier, Clay, about the opportunities that come before us as Indigenous people with the people that are in our country, such as Lakota country, where the Sturgis and all the bikers go over there, and the opportunities that are available to us. William has said it in a pretty, he gives you the ins and outs of the realities that we, the first people, face when it comes to these opportunities that are before us. But what he has said, that what has occurred to the original people is the atrocities that come into our land. We don't look at them as opportunities. We look at them as a violation of the way that we operate in our land. And I think to this artificial design or this illusion that is before us, that the original people have a original set of traditions or principles and morals that we live by in this country. And in order for us to take advantage of these opportunities and provide ourselves with a system that is equal to the opportunities that you're talking about, taking advantage of the money that's coming in through these bikers and through these roadways and highways that come through our territory, is that we, the original people, once we establish our position here in this country, and not as a conquered people or a people of second class, that we can originate a formal balance of business in this country that doesn't exist today. When we look at the way that this country does business, there's so much deceit and lies and manipulations that occur that take advantage of that opportunity of making money. Now, the original people aren't like that. We do things with honor.
Well, let me ask you a quick question here, Art. Let me ask you a quick question. You ever taken a scalp? Have you ever taken a scalp?
No, I haven't.
Well, you know what? I've never shot an Indian either. I didn't fall for the whole cowboys and Indians bullshit from Hollywood. So how do we work together? I hear so much of this from our side, from the white Americans, from the Texan side. I don't want to work. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that because well, they did this to me. They did that to me. They did this. We give me all the excuses that you can think of that we can't work together. I trade all that for just one reasonable idea, like I put forth here. Let's recreate a Indian village based on what we know now, basing on who we are today. Let's we want to make money. Yeah, the only money available right now is the Federal Reserve. I don't like that either. We can change that. We can take gold. We can take silver. We can even even Nevada and New York issue their own money, Ithaca ours, and which means you can set up a Lakota village right there in Sturgis, and I would say it would take less than a month to get every bike shop up there, trading in every Indian village there, every cafe, every restaurant, trading in Lakota dollars. And Lakota's even got a bank. They've even built the bank up there. Now, you've got so much to offer. Why can't we find a way to work together?
Should I answer this?
Yes.
The whole country is in a state of contention.
Divide and conquer is the oldest playbook in the goddamn New World Order.
The whole country is in a state of contention because it's beginning to get more desperate. And desperate men and women get angry. And
I'm angry. I can't stand aside this. Go ahead.
They let their sentiments run their heart. The brain runs the heart. And out of that you get a corrupted heart. And from that you lose what is going on. Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And all that we stuff. There's some funny words that come to mind and phrases about that, but how about this for starters? Decent people decide what their decent values are going to be. And when they get those decent values, such as Art and I have laid this out, how do we do this? We laid it out in the continuity of interest, Indigenous continuity of interest. This is about bridging. This is about bridging in a good way, in common, not as a partnership. I do not propose any more partnerships anywhere because they are not based on values. They're based on sumptuary proof of concept, material gains on a fiat monetary system that they don't even own, called money. So if my answer in a nutshell would be, you want to see the villages, you want to see the teepees, then that is really up to the Lakota, Dakota. It's up to the Washoe, to the Nez Perce, to everything. It's not up to the people that are of recent landed descent. And the reason is, why would I go to somebody who cannot even clarify their values? Because the first thing that happens in the difference in Indian country, if you want to call it Indian country, and the other general domain, is that art is speaking from the heart, and the general domain landed people are speaking from their wallet. And in that wallet is sustainable development, a monetary gain, a cost-benefit ratio, usually 3x, and there is no real good footing, no equal footing, no footing. What do you stand on? And a lot of people that are objecting to the form of how the law has been perverted in this country will appear and say, I am a private man. I am a private Indian, which is a little bit testy. I am a private woman standing on my amicus. And to have these decent values requires backing up away from the presumption that the quality of life is derived by income. That is a banker precept, and that has been put into the University of Colorado, Brigham Young, Yale, Harvard, UCLA, and all of the rest of the institutions. And it's going to take decent value of people, not of institutions, to get us through. And the reason is, once it is in institutional normative rationale, in comes the lawyers who write the laws on this. What we're talking about today is a court system of laws, and what you have clearly shown me is the incredible dichotomy between the landed people and Washoe, Quileute, Lakota, Blackfeet, and all the people who commence from a prayer, a life prayer, and commence from the heart. The reason there is contention all over this country is that our predatory economic system is in other sovereigns around the world extracting their natural assets and causing them confusion and atrocities, and of course it always is blamed on their internal sectarian tensions. And in this country we can break it up to the red states and the blue states and the Republican Party and the liberals and the Democrats, who are all really quite in the same partnership. And an in common association is a well-defined term throughout history and law. When the lawyers make deals, they collaborate. And the problem with them making deals is when they jump out in and they're going to say, well, we're going to do a village. Well, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to incorporate. Then we're going to have to go get a lawyer to write it up for us. At that point, the discussion is finished. The heartfelt idea and value is gone. It is now going to conform to a person's concept proof or proof of concept, which is, how much can I make off this? Well, we haven't even decided yet in this country. I think it's fairly clear, based on Bitcoin and all of the other challenges to the federal note and the IMF and the corporate manipulation of money. We haven't discussed and finish the discussion about valuation in money. So how is it that we're going to immediately jump in and function within the dysfunction? Art's position in mind is not to engage in the contention, but to identify accurately, explicitly, and completely the sum of all things is the truth. And at that point, we can then be reasonably competent beyond the mystery, because as you begin today, you begin with the mystery. And the first mystery to get rid of in this land is the confusion in the peoples and between the peoples and in their body, heart, and mind. There is confusion in the heart and mind of all humans. And the reason there is confusion is there's no ground. There's no touch the earth ground. It's just talk. So when we understand economics, we understand what it is in and for itself. If you're to talk about economic development, you need to talk about what it is before you run with the idea, that proof that this is going to be profitable. Because, you know, there's many lands and many cities and many lands with very well-built buildings, you know, a lot of concrete. They're all built and they're standing empty. And the reason they're standing empty is economic planners came in and said, we'll do this and we'll do that. And then the fact of the matter is, the people abandoned those because it was not of their decent values. So if we want to talk about something that's going to really come back into Lakota country, especially since you've bridged that, we're going to have to talk about the economic development plans, including those being done by churches, church corporations, and we're going to have to talk about the role of judges and lawyers who are the gatekeepers in economic channeling. They are the gatekeepers. That's called common law. And common law means basically you resolve the disputes among the people fighting over the dollars and property. That's what common law is about. They seldom want to talk about covenants, certainly virtues, honesty, and so forth in a courtroom. And I can give you attorneys' names that'll tell you exactly what a courtroom is to them after 40 years of practice, as opposed to what decency is. So, to answer your question, it's not going to be done. Go ahead, Art.
Okay, yeah, just to add to that, on that last part of what I said, in spiritual terms, when First Nations people want to be involved, or we want to create the opportunities that are available to us, the first thing that we always have to remember is we are not monsters. We are not the two-headed monster that this artificial design that this country has created through this corporate venue of doing business, what we presume or proclaim to be his original human beings, a man and a woman. And when we do that, we are talking about being connected to the Creator, being connected to the land, the animal, and the water. And so when we do business, we are not doing business as a monster, a two-headed monster. When we're talking about the straw man, the driver's license, the birth certificate, Social Security number, all of that stuff are a fabrication of identity that creates us to be an artificial being, which is an instrument of death, because that straw man is not a living being. And the original human being that the First Nations were we still continue to be that because that's the basis of all of our standings in this country, which the bar lawyers and judges and the jihads of this country continue to exclude. End of discussion.
Well, maybe we are to apply a little bit of that monster thing. I wouldn't mind adopting a little bit of that and following the words of Shakespeare and hanging all of these lawyers. Listen, I'm gonna play a little clip here. I want to thank both of you for being on my show today, and of course you're welcome back anytime. And if you've got some ideas on how we can put this into effect, I haven't really heard that today. I don't know how to reach out to the individual Lakotas or the individual Apaches or even you know, my people here in Texas, like Dr. Jake Wade and his tribe. You know, we've tried that. We've tried to do it by the book. We haven't been able to. He's still under attack there, trying to, even though we've set up schools, you know, they still got us divided, and I haven't signed a peace treaty. I am not conquered yet. But I want to thank you again, both of you, for the work that you're doing and the research that you're doing. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you being on my show. You're welcome to...
thank you.
I'm going to finish up this little clip here, and you're welcome to stay on if you want.
Clayton?
Yes, sir.
Clayton, let me finish in 10 seconds.
Okay.
People are all forcing each other to be on the same page while they're reading the wrong book.
Okay.
So we'll take it from there. Thank you very much again.
All right, sure.
Thank you, Clay.
Because if you look what troops actually do, you know, just some basic comparisons. I know lots and lots of gun owners. They all know the basics of gun safety. You don't point a gun at somebody if you don't have the justification to kill them. You treat every gun as if it's loaded, yada, yada, yada. You know, a lot of you already know these rules. Then you watch videos of troops in, you know, whatever country around the world. They're pointing their guns at people at random. They're not watching where they're shooting. Even when there is combat, they seem to just be paying no attention to the fact that they're in a city with 1 million people within range of their stray bullets. Imagine the same thing applied here. Well, there are these really bad people in this building, in this city, so we're just shelling it. Bullets are flying around and raining down on the rest of the city. And we're just wildly firing machine guns and rocket launchers into this building with stuff flying everywhere. And golly gee, if there's some collateral damage, if a few people walking by get killed, well, that's too bad, because the people in that building are so bad that we have to do this. Nobody would accept that. The funny thing is, well, it isn't funny, it's sad. That happened when Philadelphia firebombed itself. The MOVE incident years and years ago, where it happened, and people are like, what are you doing? You're bombing yourself. Ah! So if it happened in the U.S., nobody would accept it. Nobody would say that's okay. As long as there's bad people in the building. If you're just randomly blowing stuff up and a bunch of civilians die in the process, well, that's the price we pay to get those bad people. Nobody would accept that argument. And yet tons and tons of American nationalists accept the exact same argument when it's outside of the imaginary line called the United States of America. Over there, if you're just blowing stuff up and randomly firing a machine gun in a city with your bullets flying who knows where, well, that's its war. These are the price we... No, morality doesn't change depending on which side of an invisible line you're on. So what the U.S. troops are doing is absolutely immoral. They're endangering a hell of a lot of people, even if some of the people they're fighting against really are bad and nasty, and some totally are. And I would never claim otherwise. Saddam was an evil bastard. I'm glad he's dead. If he's dead. I assume he's dead. And there are lots and lots of aggressors in lots of other governments. I'm not at all saying, oh, everybody else is nice, it's just the U.S. military is mean. No, anybody who commits aggression is the bad guy. Anybody who uses only defensive force is the good guy. Trouble is, government militaries never limit themselves to purely defensive force. So you see them blowing stuff up and pointing guns at people and kicking down doors. I mean, I swear to uphold the Constitution and protect it from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then they're kicking down doors. Really? Where was your probable cause to boot down that guy's door and point a machine gun in his face and say, are you one of the bad guys? Or do you think the principle just doesn't apply outside the line? The fact that all U.S. troops swear to uphold and protect the Constitution, and the only excuse is, well, it doesn't apply outside the magic line. Legally, it doesn't. But philosophically and morally, of course it does. And the founders even said these are unalienable rights. They're inherent. They're not the result of legislation, which means they apply outside the line just as much as inside. So troops swear loyalty to this set of ideas and then constantly violate it on the other side of the world. Randomly stop people. Really? What was your probable cause to stop every car coming down the road there? And now they're starting to do that in this country too. Yeehaw. Because people are getting used to it and they're thinking, well, this is what it takes for security. So, no, first of all, obviously the troops are not protecting freedom over there. They are violating the freedom of lots and lots of individual human beings. And the fact that they aren't American makes no freaking difference. You randomly stop people and detain people and declare a curfew, point guns at people, kick people's doors down, you know, no probable cause, just kind of, there might be bad guys around here. You are absolutely the enemy of freedom. I've said this before, it upsets people, I don't care, it's the truth. A hell of a lot of U.S. troops have done things that have made it so they deserved to be shot. Their intended victims had every right to shoot them. If you go into somebody's house with a machine gun in your hands and you kick down their door, they have the right to protect themselves and defend their home and kill you. And the fact that you have an American flag on your shoulder makes no stinking difference at all. So no, the U.S. military does not make us safer. It does not.
All right, who are you? What do you want? Hello? I answered your call. What do you want? All right, stay over with you then. Friggin' trolls. Alright, folks. We're out of here. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the views. I am Clay Douglas. I am the Free American. God bless you all. See ya tomorrow.